Welcome to Media Storm Cooper. Now let's begin with our top story. Questions arise over what Trump may be hiding. Washington, in the quiet corridors of the Justice Department and across the airwaves of cable news, a single question keeps surfacing. What exactly is the Trump administration not telling the American people about the Jeffrey Epstein files? It is a question that has grown louder in recent weeks, fueled by a series of incomplete document releases, missing interview summaries, and pointed accusations from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. President Donald Trump, who campaigned on promises of full transparency and signed the Epstein Files Transparency Act into law just months after taking office, now finds his administration under scrutiny for what critics describe as selective openness. Supporters, meanwhile, insist the process has been thorough and that any gaps are minor or the result of bureaucratic errors. The public caught in the middle is left wondering whether the full story has finally come out, or or whether something important remains concealed. To understand why this matters, it helps to step back and look at how we arrived here. Jeffrey Epstein, the wealthy financier convicted of sex trafficking, died in a Manhattan jail cell in 2019 while awaiting trial on charges involving the exploitation of dozens of underage girls. His death, ruled a suicide, only deepened public fascination and suspicion about the powerful people who had associated with him over the years. Epstein's network included business leaders, politicians, academics, and celebrities. Among those names that appeared repeatedly in court records and flight logs was Donald Trump. Trump has long acknowledged knowing Epstein socially in the 1980s and 1990s. The two men moved in the same New York and Palm Beach circles. Trump once described Epstein as a terrific guy in a 2002 interview, noting that he liked beautiful women, many of them on the younger side. But Trump has also insisted that their relationship ended years before Epstein's crimes became public. He has pointed to an incident at his Mar-a-Lago club around 2004 when Epstein was reportedly banned after allegedly hitting on an underage girl. Trump has maintained he had no knowledge of Epstein's criminal activities and has repeatedly denied any involvement in them. That history took on new urgency in late 2025. Congress, responding to years of public pressure from victims' advocates and transparency groups, passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The law required the Justice Department to release virtually all records related to Epstein and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell: flight logs, emails, interview notes, videos, and investigative materials, with narrow exceptions to protect victims' identities. President Trump signed the bill on November 19, 2025, calling it a step toward lifting the veil on one of the most disturbing chapters in recent American history. The first major release came on January 30, 2026. The Justice Department, under Attorney General Pam Bondi, posted more than 3.5 million pages of documents, along with images and other materials. Officials described the production as a massive compliance effort involving hundreds of attorneys and multiple layers of review. In a statement, the department emphasized that no names of prominent individuals had been redacted and that the goal was maximum transparency. Yet, almost immediately, questions began to surface. Journalists and researchers combing through the massive database noticed inconsistencies. Some documents appeared to be missing. Serial numbers on files suggested gaps. And a few high-profile names, including the president's, seemed to generate an unusual amount of interest and, according to some accounts, an unusual amount of caution during the review process. Then, in late February, NPR published an investigation that brought the issue into sharp focus. Reporters discovered that the public database was missing dozens of pages related to sexual abuse accusations involving President Trump. Specifically, the files concerned a woman who had come forward in 2019, shortly after Epstein's arrest. She told FBI agents that Epstein had introduced her to Trump when she was between 13 and 15 years old. In graphic detail, she described an alleged assault in which Trump, she claimed, forced her head toward his exposed penis, and she bit him in self-defense. The woman also alleged abuse by Epstein himself. According to the NPR review, the FBI conducted at least 4 interviews with the woman and prepared summaries known as 302 forms. Only one of those summaries, the one that did not mention Trump, had been included in the initial public release. The other 3, totaling more than 50 pages when including related notes, were absent. The Justice Department later acknowledged that these materials had been incorrectly coded as duplicative and therefore left out. On March 5th, the department released the missing documents, stating that the allegations remained uncorroborated and that no charges had ever been filed. The timing and explanation did little to quiet the concerns. Lawmakers from both parties expressed skepticism. Rep. Jamie Raskin, the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee, reviewed unredacted versions of the files at a Justice Department facility in early February. He reported that Trump's name appeared more than 1 million times in the database. Raskin described seeing emails and notes that appeared to contradict some of Trump's public statements about his relationship with Epstein, including one 2009 exchange in which Epstein's lawyers recounted a conversation with Trump's attorneys. In that account, Trump reportedly said Epstein had never been asked to leave Mar-a-Lago, a detail that seemed at odds with Trump's later claim that he had banned Epstein after the alleged incident with the underage girl. Raskin went further, accusing the department of spying on members of Congress by tracking which documents lawmakers searched while reviewing the files. Photographs surfaced showing Attorney General Bondi carrying notes that listed the search histories of Democratic representatives. The congressman called for an inspector general investigation, arguing that the oversight process itself was being compromised. On the Republican side, some voices echoed the call for completeness. While most GOP lawmakers have defended the administration's overall effort, a handful have privately expressed frustration that the releases have created more questions than answers. Public polling reflects the broader unease. A recent survey conducted by DropSite News, Zeteo, and Data for Progress found that roughly half of likely voters believe the administration's decision to launch military action against Iran may have been intended, at least in part, to shift attention away from the Epstein matter. Even among Trump supporters, a notable portion said they wanted every page made public, no exceptions. The White House has pushed back firmly. In statements and Truth Social posts, President Trump has called the missing document stories fake news and a continuation of the witch hunt but he has pointed out that many of the allegations in the files were submitted anonymously to the FBI's tip line in the run-up to the 2020 election and were marked by agents as unverifiable or not credible. The Department of Justice is not hiding anything, Trump has said. Why? We are the ones who signed the law to release these files. If there were anything damaging, it would have been weaponized against me years ago. Attorney General Bondi has echoed that position. In congressional testimony and public briefings, she has emphasized the scale of the release, millions of pages reviewed by more than 500 attorneys, and the careful balancing act required to protect victims while honoring the transparency mandate. She has described the initial omissions as honest mistakes in a complex coding process, not deliberate concealment. The department has continued to release additional batches in March, including the disputed FBI 302 summaries, in what officials call an ongoing effort to close any remaining gaps. Yet, the drip-drip nature of the disclosures has kept the story alive. Advocates for Epstein's victims argue that the law was clear. Everything should have been released within 30 days with only narrow victim privacy exceptions. Instead, the process has stretched over months, with new documents appearing only after media inquiries or congressional pressure. Some survivors have told reporters they feel the government is still protecting powerful people rather than fully exposing the network that enabled Epstein's crimes. The Epstein files are not the only area where questions about transparency have arisen during the current administration. Earlier this year, the Justice Department faced criticism over its handling of a report on Trump's retention of classified documents after his first term. Trump and his legal team have asked courts to keep portions of that report sealed permanently. Separately, there have been concerns about conflicts of interest involving the Trump family's business dealings and the administration's foreign policy decisions. And the ongoing military operations in Iran have generated their own set of conflicting statements from officials about timelines, objectives, and the extent of U.S. involvement. Still, the Epstein matter stands out because of its unique combination of public fascination, moral weight, and direct personal connection to the president. Epstein's story touches on sex trafficking, elite impunity, and the limits of accountability. For many Americans, the idea that any part of that record might remain hidden, even if the hidden parts contain only unproven claims, strikes at the heart of trust in government. Legal experts note that the allegations against Trump in the files have never led to criminal charges or civil findings. The woman who made the claims in 2019 has not pursued a public lawsuit in the years since. Her account, like many others in the tip line materials, lacks corroboration from other witnesses or physical evidence. At the same time, the sheer volume of mentions of Trump in the broader Epstein records, social invitations, phone messages, flight logs, keeps the questions alive. Why, some ask, would an administration that prides itself on fighting the deep state and exposing corruption appear so reluctant to turn over every last page? Congress continues to press for answers. Bipartisan letters have gone to the Justice Department demanding a full accounting of every document that was withheld or coded as duplicative. Oversight committees have scheduled additional hearings. Victims' lawyers are preparing their own reviews of the released materials to determine whether further legal action is warranted. For now, the American public is left to weigh the evidence that has been made available against the gaps that remain. The Trump administration insists it has delivered on its promise of transparency and that the missing pieces were administrative oversights, now corrected. Critics counter that the pattern of delays and partial releases suggests something more deliberate. Perhaps a desire to shield the president from embarrassment or to avoid complicating ongoing diplomatic or political calculations. What is clear is that the Epstein files have become more than a historical record. They have turned into a test of whether the government's commitment to openness extends to the most uncomfortable truths, even when those truths touch the highest levels of power. As the releases continue and lawmakers dig deeper, the central question lingers. Have we seen everything, or is there still more that the public does not know? The coming weeks may bring additional documents, more congressional testimony, and perhaps further explanations from the Justice Department. Whether those steps will satisfy the growing chorus of skeptics or simply fuel new rounds of speculation remains to be seen. In a polarized nation already weary of scandal and distrust, the Epstein files have become one more chapter in a longer story about accountability, power, and the public's right to know. As the debate unfolds, one thing is certain: the American people are watching closely. They remember the promises made during the campaign. They remember the law that was signed with such fanfare. And they are asking, with increasing urgency, whether those commitments have been fully honored or whether something important is still being held back.